guys, how you doing? My name's Emily Rose and currently I'm actually on tour with my band Chaika, and I thought I'd try and take a little bit of time out to make some videos for you. And I was racking my brains trying to think of what it was that I really wanted to do first. And I decided after doing a workshop the other night with some folks who are interested in the way Chaika arranges, that I do a few videos on sort of harmony-based things. And then I got into this really sort of excited conversation, definitely from my side, with my friend about how I reckon we should practice scales. Now don't turn off, because I know that scales can sound really boring to some people, but for me, learning a scale is not about learning something going up and down really fast. At least that's how I was taught when I was a kid trying to do classical piano, you know, like how fast can I play the scale? Yay! But it doesn't really teach me anything about, say, the landscape of the key that I'm in. Let me show you a little bit of what I mean. Let's say I'm in C major, which has 7 notes. C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. I can play that up and down and practice it really fast, and I can get it under my fingers, but I'm not really using any understanding of harmony or necessarily exercising like my oral skills and understanding what I'm hearing as I do that. It's mainly kind of just a movement that I'm memorizing into my body up and down. So the way that I love to teach practicing scales and practicing them myself, which I'm still doing, is actually to get right inside the scale and to build chords from inside the scale. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to do this in a couple of different keys. And I'm going to do it from this angle, and then I'll also change the camera angle so you can sort of see a little bit more from above. So I'm going to do it simply in C major first, and then I'll do it in a couple of other keys. And I'm just going to start with very basics, and then in some of my next videos I'm going to show you more and more and more of how we could expand on this idea and how to make it more interesting and how to understand harmony in a deeper way by practicing your scales in a deeper way. Okay, so here we go. Very basics. We're going to start with triads, which is a 3-note chord. We're going to be in C major, so I'm going to use the 7 notes: C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Because here, when I get back to the top of my scale, I'm back at a C. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to name each one of those number 1 to number 7. So C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5, A is 6, and B is 7. And then how am I going to build my chords? Well, I'm going to start with my number 1 chord, which is going to be a C something chord. And I'm going to skip each note in the scale. So I'll play C, I won't play D, the next one, but I will play E. And I won't play F, the next one, but I'll play G. So then what you get, C, E, G, is what we call a C major triad. It's got 3 notes in it. That's chord number 1 in the key of C major. And what I encourage people to do is not just play it up and down and memorize the pattern, but to also sing it and tell yourself what note is inside, what type of chord you're playing, and what number chord it is. So for example, I'd go chord number 1, C major, C, E, G, E, C, G, C, E, G, and play it like that. Then we go on and we move on to chord number 2. So instead of starting on the C, I start on note number 2, which is D, and I do the same thing. I skip D, F, A. This is what we call chord number 2. It's a D, it's an F, and it's an A. And chord number 2, it's a minor chord. I'll talk a little bit more about what makes a major chord, what makes a minor chord in a different video. Let's not get too sidetracked. Then we're going to go for chord number 3, which starts from E. E, G, B, B, G, E. Chord number 3, it's E minor. Chord number 4 starts from F. F, skip up, A, skip up, C, C, A, F. That is chord number 4, F major. Same thing with chord number 5. G, D, oh, that's not a D. G, B, D, D, B, G. That's a G major chord. Chord number 5. Then we're going to chord number 6, starts from an A. A, C, E, C, A. Chord number 6, that's a minor chord. That is what we call a diminished chord. And again, I'll explain exactly why in a different video. But for now, let's remember that chord number 7 is a diminished. And then we're back to chord number 1, which is C major. So here's a little bit of a different angle for you guys. Here's chord number 1. Chord number 2. That's the D minor. Chord number 3, E minor. Chord number 4, F major. Chord number 5, G major. Chord number 6, A minor. Chord number 7, B diminished. So we've got your C major scale, which a lot of people may practice, you know, up and down. Like so. They may practice it up and down maybe 4 octaves. Another 2. All the way up. They don't practice it all the way down. But then once you sort of start to get used to the scale like that, you might want to get inside the chords like what I'm doing, and you go, okay, well, inside this nice landscape of C major, we've got chord number 1, C major, chord number 2, D minor, chord number 3, E minor, chord number 4, F major, chord number 5, G major, chord number 6, A minor, chord number 7, B diminished, chord number 1. And then what can we do with that? Well, then instead of always practicing just stepping notes around in the scale, this is what we're doing, we can take those chords that we've been building from the scale and we can turn them into arpeggios. So we can go all the way up, or we can start to go underneath. And so then I say, okay, let's practice them as an arpeggio. So chord number 1, C major. Chord number 2, D minor. Chord number 3, E minor. Chord number 4, F major. Chord number 5, G major. Chord number 6, A minor. Chord number 7, B diminished. And then we're back to chord number 1. Little wider angle for you guys for some of those arpeggios. For example, chord 1. Yeah, C major. Chord 2. do them in inversions. So what's an inversion? Well, an inversion is kind of what it says. It inverts something, like turns it upside down. So instead of starting on the C for my chord 1, C major, okay, I'm going to put the C, take it and put it on top. And I can practice them like that. So I can go... etc., etc. The important thing for me as well is what I say is always be active when you're practicing. Keep an active brain. A lot of the time that means keeping an active mouth. So it means talking to yourself out loud and telling yourself what you're doing. So in that case, I'd be saying, hey, chord number 1, C major, but I'm starting from an E. So that's first inversion. Yeah. And then you can do another inversion as well. So in C major, you've got your root position, your first inversion, and then the second inversion, which would mean I take that E and I put it on the top. Like so. Just a close up on some of those inversions. So for example, you've got chord 1 of C major. That's your root position. I could put this guy up the top. That's your first inversion. And I could put this guy up the top here. That's your second inversion. And you can do that with any chord. So if I'm playing around in G major, I could practice, for example, doing this. And turn it into a little exercise. And then you can start to mix things around, you know, to get more used to the landscape of the key. So you can say, okay, I'm going to play chord 1, then chord 4, then chord 3, chord 6, and start calling them out to yourself and be like, okay, what's chord 1? It's C major. Practice it like this. Or even practice playing your inversions like that, up and down, and maybe practice your scale in your right hand. So I'm being really creative here. You can, you know, make up your own ways of getting around these things as well. Now, one thing I wanted to mention as well is something's not obvious to a lot of people, but chord number 1 to chord number 7 like this, when you're building chords from the scale, the quality of those chords, when I say quality, I mean if it's major or minor or diminished, or later on we'll also learn augmented. Those qualities won't change if you go to a different key. So for example, if I change my key into G major and I'm trying to practice the landscape of G major and this particular scale, so G major starts from a G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. The chords that we build will still have the same qualities. So the order goes major, chord 1, minor, chord 2, minor, chord 3, major, chord 4, major, chord 5, minor, chord 6, and diminished, chord 7. So when I go to build those same chords in my other major key, it's going to be the same. Have a listen. G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished. Here in G major for you guys. So chord number 1 is G major, G, B, and D. Chord number 2, A minor. Chord number 3, B minor. Notice that I've got the F sharp in there because it's in the landscape of the key. sharp in. Chord number 4, C major. Chord number 5, D major. Chord number 6, E minor. Chord number 7, F sharp diminished. Chord 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 1. Just so it sort of sounds finished to our westernized major key ears. Great, so that's basically like what I would start with, especially with, you know, any of my students who start to learn scales. Within the first couple of months that they learn, they're also learning the chords on the scale. And in another video, I'm going to talk about how I look at the cycle of fifths and make sure that they relate what they're doing to the cycle of fifths as well, because that's a really kind of important concept in a lot of westernized music and music that uses major and minor keys. Another thing, just before I sort of finish off this video, that I want to go through is making up your own patterns inside the key. So for example, instead of always just playing your scale up and down, and then, you know, playing your chords on the scale, you can also start to be really creative from the get-go and make up different patterns. So a simple pattern might be just to play 3 notes ascending in a row, for example in C major. And then I could start it from note number 2, note number 3, note number 4, 5, 6, 7. Finish on the top. And you can get as easy or complex as you like. So you might want to practice doing something like that, hands together. And do it in several different keys or whatever scale you're practicing. So again, if you're in G major, and then you can, you know, make different complicated patterns if you like. For example, I might take chord number 1 like this, I might split it up, and then maybe I'll walk back down. So again, not super complex, but definitely more complicated than my last one. So then I could do it all the way up. Chord number 1, chord number 2, in my G major key. You have to remember the F sharp there. Also, I can look at those inversions that I was doing before and maybe make a pattern out of those. So I could start in my first inversion and I could do something like this. There's endless possibilities. How about something like this? Do the same thing in G major. Sounds a little bit like the famous book Hannon, like 60 exercises. The thing about that book is that, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's very repetitive, all in one key. But my suggestion is, if you want to get more creative, make up your own and do it in all keys. Don't just stick to one key. So just a close-up of some of those little patterns that I was playing. I was just making them up, so you can make up your own, remember? There was this one. I might add as well, you can practice using different fingerings. So yeah, so this way you're practicing with the second, third, and fourth fingers. And you can also practice with your third, fourth, and fifth fingers. Combination you can think of. Same thing in G major would look something like this. And here's some of those other ones that I did, something like this. G major. There's also, different ways that if you're practicing a particular technique, let's say you want to make your third and fourth fingers stronger. You could be practicing these concepts at the same time as practicing in a different technique. So let's say I want to learn my chords a bit better. I'm in G major and I'm like, okay, I'm going to make something up with chord number 2, chord number 5, and chord number 1. Chord number 2 is A minor, chord number 5 is D major, and chord number 1 is G. Maybe I'll try them in inversions. So let me see. Well, there we go with the first inversion. And I want to make my third and fourth fingers stronger. So maybe I'll actually sort of alternate between them. And then I'm going to chord 5, right, in an inversion. And then I'm going to chord 1 in the inversion. So I could practice doing that sort of thing and come up with my own exercises as well. Hey, maybe I even want to practice doing some double notes, or triple notes like this. So I can kind of come up with whatever I like. Chord 3, maybe I want to practice alternating between 2 fingers. So maybe my thumb and second finger. Or my second and fourth, perhaps. Maybe for my next chord, I want to practice holding some fingers down. So maybe I'm going to practice going like this. So I'm just being really creative and coming up with my own exercises whilst practicing thinking about the harmony inside my scale and building those chords from inside the scale. And because I'm keeping my brain active, thinking about the harmony within my scale, within my key or my landscape, my tonality, whatever you want to think about it as, you're actually really learning more about music, more about being creative and improvising, all at the same time as actually practicing technique. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this little video while I've been on tour. But there's going to be more to come because I'm super inspired to share lots of things with you. And I hope to see you. Log on, check out my Facebook page. And I'm also launching a Patreon account on the 5th of April, which is pretty soon. And there's going to be heaps and heaps and heaps of videos like this, as well as beautiful videos of jams that I'm going to be having with some friends, different music, songwriting tips, and also lots of tips about the music industry, recording. Wow, so many things. I'm really inspired to share with you, and I hope to see you back soon. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you later.